Hey everybody, welcome to week 6 of class. This is the final week of module 2, focusing on the biological aspects of addiction. So let's talk about what we're getting into this week. So we are here in module 2. Let's scroll down to the bottom of the page. So we are in week 6. So let's check out our content. So this week, we are looking more at behavioral addiction. So things like gambling, eating disorders, shopping, gaming, internet, right? So all of those things that, all of those kind of topics that are non-substance related. Again, just kind of like last week when we were talking about co-occurring disorders, we're going to talk about this in general, like in this foundational way. So like a lot of information, not a deep dive, but a breadth of information. And then in the spring, there's a course on gambling and gaming disorders, where we will look specifically at gambling and gaming disorders in more detail. And for that reason, your supplemental content and things like that are kind of focused away from gambling and gaming to get more exposure to some of the other things like eating disorders. Just a side note, in my practice, and of course, this is my practice, this is my one experience. So we have a whole course for gambling because the state requires it. In order to get licensed, you have to have the equivalent of 2 credits of gambling and gaming. So that's why we have a whole course for it. And it's interesting, in practice, what I have seen more are eating disorders. And so I think process addictions or behavioral addictions are incredibly important to talk about. But I think that our state could do better, and we are working at the state level to try to do better about how can we make sure that our LACs are equipped to engage with process addictions, not just gambling and gaming. In Montana, that is definitely a high prevalence, but what's interesting is people don't seek treatment for it. And part of the reason that people don't seek treatment for it is, one, they don't really think it's an issue, or they look at the substance as the issue and not the gambling or the gaming. And also because reimbursement sources don't actually pay for that diagnosis. So if somebody has a standalone gambling disorder, most insurances actually won't reimburse for that. They have to have some other type of diagnosis. So if they have an alcohol use disorder and gambling disorder, then you could bill insurance under the alcohol use disorder and simultaneously treat both. But if it's a standalone gambling, it doesn't work that way. So it's interesting. More of that to come in the gambling class this spring. So our objectives for this week, we are looking at the interconnectedness of all addictions and facts concerning the uniqueness of each one. So how are they related and how are they different? Gambling, food, shopping, internet, sex addiction. We're exploring socioeconomic contributions to gambling addiction, such as machine technology, state government support, and the gambling industry's influence on defining addictions. So, there are political factors at play for all of these things. We are going to learn how the biological factors are implicated in behavioral problems such as anorexia, which in turn has much in common with obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's that biological piece for this, for these 3 chapters in the end of this module. We'll discuss changes that the DSM-5 has made in naming and listing the criteria for a number of behavioral disorders, such as binge eating disorders and hoarding. We are looking to impart the basics of cognitively based therapy, an essential component in the feeling work required for persons with eating or body build obsessions. We're exploring gender differences in the ways that behavioral addiction find expression. So there are gender differences in how behavioral addictions appear. And we will look at motivational interviewing, so looking at William Miller's motivational scheme, frames, for work with compulsive users of the internet, or for persons with that really have this like drive for extreme behavior. So lots of stuff actually happening in chapter 5. So let's check out our content for this week. What are we going to be reading? So chapter 5 of our textbook. And then, like I said, I added some content specific to eating disorders. So looking at the connection between alcohol abuse and eating disorders, there's this great article called Eating Disorders, the Brain's Foul Trickery. So looking at that biological piece again, the brain with eating disorders. And then more brain in anorexia nervosa, brain responds differently to hunger signals. So this first link is like a brief overview, but the full research article can be found at this last little link at the end of the page. So check all of those out. Really, in keeping with a focus on the biology of addiction this week, our supplemental material really is looking at focusing on that biological piece, looking at genetics, looking at the brain. So let's check out our assignments and next steps for this week. So we are going to engage in those course materials I just reviewed. You will participate in the discussion forum and you will take the module 2 exam. So I will post a separate video here on this page reviewing both the discussion forum and the exam. And then next week, we are going to shift gears. We start a new module next week, and we are going to be looking at the psychological aspects of addiction, first looking at addiction across the lifespan. So as always, if you have questions, I want to see them, head on over to the homepage, post them there, and I look forward to engaging in this content with you and reading your discussions this week.